My name is Shar, and I'm your host for My Style Life. My Style Life is a fashion podcast for industry insiders and outsiders alike, covering style, business, healthcare, music, and culture. Tune in monthly for My Style Live podcast. To learn more, visit mystylelive.com. When fashion meets pop culture together, it is fantastic. This monthly podcast discusses all the latest music, fashion, healthcare, celebrity, sports, and business. Good afternoon. Today we have our special guest, Dr. Dennis, MD, PharmD. My Style Live podcast is extremely excited to partner with Anchor in offering our top podcast advertisers the first of their kind sponsorship via the Anchor platform. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. Yes, I said it is free. Free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your own phone and computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and others. You make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in just one place. Sign up for a free social media webinar at MyStyleLive at 1kmeg.net or visit 1kmeg.net/contact to use the offer My Style Live free webinar. Again, sign up for the free social media webinar at MyStyleLive at 1kmeg.net. Thank you, Dr. Dennis, for joining us today on My Style Live podcast. Today we will be discussing to vaccinate or to not. Dr. Dennis, could you give us a little background about yourself and your profession?
First of all, thank you so much for having me participate on My Style Live podcast. This is a wonderful vehicle and opportunity to provide some education as it pertains to the vaccine and our current status. My background as a physician, number one, is always to see the patient. So I am a clinical physician and I regularly see patients on a daily basis, and I see many patients who are COVID positive or COVID symptomatic or presenting with symptoms that look or mimic COVID. In addition to that, I am also associated as a medical director for a couple of biopharmaceutical organizations, one of which being CSL Bearing Plasma, which is also a participant in the convalescent plasma program, where they take plasma from COVID-positive antibody participant donors, and we send that to biopharmaceutical organizations to help them in the development of vaccines. In addition, I do the same thing for Octapharma Plasma USA as well. So I'm currently medical director for two organizations that are participating in plasma extraction for antibody white cell participation and involvement in immune programs for vaccination development.
that is extremely interesting and quite a CV. Thank you, Dr. Dennis, for giving us a great introduction of yourself. Dr. Dennis, what is your impression of the COVID-19 vaccine?
Well, my impression of the COVID vaccine is that this is a really exciting time right now. As we speak right now, we have just completed the first week of true vaccinations in multi-state locations for the frontline workers and those who are at highest risk for exposure to the COVID vaccine. Pfizer Pharmaceuticals has made that available to those participants in the first round of what we call first prime initial vaccinations have been completed, and we're still expanding, and we're excited that the process has begun to hopefully putting a cease or to slow down this COVID-19 spread globally.
Okay, so that's great. So another question that I have for you, when the COVID-19 vaccine is given to everyone in the United States and abroad globally, do you think everyone will be able to travel?
That's a good question, but when we look at the background as to the participants in this vaccination program, there are currently about 23 companies that are biopharmaceutical organizations that are participating in some form of process of developing a vaccine. 23 different companies. Currently, right now, we have 2 companies that have been approved, one of which being Pfizer Pharmaceuticals and the other being Moderna. And at the time of this podcast, I'm sure that many other companies will be coming forward with results of their phase 2, phase 1 studies looking to come out as well. Travel is such a nice thing that many of us have not been able to do comfortably for many months. But with the advent of a vaccine and the excitement of having a vaccine, my expectation in healthcare workers and physicians abroad and locally are looking to see some sort of what I call a slowing down or true prevention of COVID-19 spreading to others, which could allow us to be able to travel more safely and to participate in economic growth, as well as true, number one, having safety amongst our families and our friends.
Okay, Dr. Dennis, what are some common side effects that people should expect from the COVID-19?
Well, right now, side effect profiles related to the vaccine are not well known. Right now, within the first week of vaccinations, we've had a few situations that occurred, which included at-site injection site pain. There have been also some allergic reactions related to headache, shortness of breath, somewhat allergic type of symptoms associated with patients that have had a history of allergic reactions in past. Right now, the CDC is stating that they recommend that if you have had an allergic reaction to a vaccine in the past, that maybe you should communicate with your primary care doctor prior to getting the vaccine and or not participate in the vaccine. Those individuals who have had responses negatively to food products or to insects or smaller reactions, the CDC is stating that they can participate in vaccinations, and they're recommending that a COVID vaccination should go forward and you should participate in that process. Again, currently CDC guidelines are that if you individually have had a reaction, an allergic reaction to a prior vaccination, for instance, a flu shot of some sort or a shingle shot, and it was negatively impacting you and you had to receive medication to reverse and or use epinephrine to reverse that, then you should not participate at this time.
Okay, Dr. Dennis, do you recommend looking at the contents of the package to find out the ingredients and if you are allergic to any of the ingredients in the package, that not to take the shot?
Currently right now, participants may not be able to see packaging because there's no packaging available right now. They just have the vaccines in what we call the proper sterile provisions. One of the products that the CDC has noted may be a problem with the allergic reactions is polyethylene glycol. And they've identified this particular substance, which is an active ingredient of the vaccine associated with Pfizer Pharmaceuticals at this time, that this product may be an issue for those who have reactions to that particular product. But you would not know that at this particular time. And there is no way of seeking package insert information from the actual shipper or Pfizer Pharmaceuticals.
Okay. Dr. Dennis, I understand that you are not an OBGYN, but I'm going to throw this question out there anyway. Should you avoid getting the COVID-19 vaccine if you are pregnant or plan on getting pregnant?
I have no clue on that answer right now. Believe it or not, that's a very important question. However, I always defer that information to an OBGYN. That way, at least you have conferred with a specialist who may have more further information on that. Because it becomes, when you talk about pregnancy, you're talking about COVID-19, you're talking about vaccinations, you always want to confer with a specialist in that particular area. Now, I do know for one instance that just from what we call just overall looking at the vaccine, there's questions always about what is the vaccine? What type of vaccine is this? What type of immunity will you get with a vaccine? The current Moderna and Pfizer vaccines are not similar to like the flu vaccine. Vaccines can come in different sorts. In other words, they can actually be input into the body to stimulate and to grow antibodies. Now, there are different ways to do this. Flu vaccines in particular, they use a small particle of the flu to initiate antibodies against the flu. In other words, they're giving you some of the flu to initiate antibodies for the flu. Now, what's beautiful about the COVID-19 vaccines for Pfizer and Moderna at this time is they are not giving you COVID-19 in the vaccine. Again, I'm going to state this very clearly. They're not giving you a piece of the virus to stimulate action in the body for the virus. They've actually created a vaccine that gives a DNA, RNA component that comes into the body. It actually changes and develops the creation of a protein that looks like COVID-19, but it really is not COVID-19. So it's almost like if you want to call it a chameleon, it actually is a chameleon. It actually comes into the body, changes the messenger RNA to create proteins that look and mimic COVID-19. Therefore, the body starts to develop antibodies to what it thinks is foreign to the body, but in actuality, it's just you. So therefore, they're not giving you flu particles like in the flu vaccine. They're actually giving you something that's not COVID-19 that looks like COVID-19. Therefore, the development of antibodies and your immune system gets boosted to actually fight and prevent COVID-19. And so this is a new genetic approach to vaccines that is safer to anyone getting the vaccine, because again, the older first line of immune defense that was created years ago was that we had to initiate and give an individual a piece of that particular disease or process. With the development of geneticists and technology, we now have been capable with this COVID-19 to create a vaccine that again is not the vaccine. And that's novel.
Dr. Dennis, this is wonderful. I enjoy hearing about this, and this is cutting edge. I love hearing about this.
Yeah, it's very cutting edge.
Be sure to tune in monthly for My Style Live, the fashion podcast for industry elite, covering style, business, healthcare, music, and culture. Tune in monthly for My Style Live podcast. To learn more, visit mystylelive.com.
And Moderna in particular was researched at Vanderbilt University. So Vanderbilt University was the main researcher location organization located actually in Nashville, Tennessee for Moderna. And they are very, very positive, and they're very excited in the outcomes of their studies and their research. And they've got a 95 to 96% efficacy rate with Moderna. And Pfizer Pharmaceuticals, they're excited about their product as well at about 94 to 95% efficacy. Now, there is a difference between the two. Now, Pfizer Pharmaceuticals...
Dr. Dennis, what is the difference?
The Pfizer Pharmaceuticals, their product actually has to be stored at a minus 70 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 70 degrees, which means it has to be kept in a very specialized cold environment, frozen environment, for the product to be actually active. Now, Moderna has the advantage of regular, normal refrigeration, and also is effective even if it's in normal room temperature for up to hours to days. So there's some significant advantages to Moderna in that its capability to maintain its active ingredients is not dependent upon a minus 70 degrees environment, which gives it an advantage from a long-term standpoint as well as global standpoint, because many clinics or hospitals or private places like health departments do not contain refrigeration or freezers at minus 70 degrees. So that in itself limits its continued growth and actually impacting getting to all areas of the United States and all 48 states.
Okay, Dr. Dennis, based upon some reading that I've done, I cannot remember the exact article, has some of the COVID shots been getting to the places frozen?
Right. They've actually gotten the Pfizer component of it came first, actually. Pfizer has a contract with the government, says that they were capable of providing 40 million units available to the U.S., about 40 million, which 20 million are accessible at this current time. At 20 million units, that represents 2 doses for 20 million people at 40 million, and if you look at the calculations. Now, the problem that has occurred, at least in California on one example, is that the product arrived at a minus 100 degrees, too cold for the product, so that product was not active and had to be destroyed because it was too cold. It was too frozen for usage. So this is another thing that goes into the factors related to transport and storage of the Pfizer product. Again, Moderna's difference is that it can be stored in a regular refrigerated system and also is still effective and active at room temperatures. So that's going to be significant as we go as we head into the next few months.
Okay, Dr. Dennis, do you encourage everyone to take the vaccine?
I personally, as a clinician, highly encourage everyone to take the vaccine. There are those who actually believe that the vaccine, and their conspiracy theories, that the vaccine contains ingredients that, quote unquote, will attack the body in such a way that it leads to negative outcomes. Now, in particular, African Americans, they themselves, because of past historical examples of improprieties and just poor care of African American populations, there's a fear in that population that this vaccine themselves will cause something negative or impact the body in such a way that they themselves later on may develop something negative that either hurts them or hurts others around them. And I can truly say that we're very happy to state that the FDA, the CDC, National Health Organizations have worked with African American researchers, clinicians, doctors, and others in the process of ensuring that the product is safe for all populations. African Americans have been involved in that process, and one of the premier researchers in Washington, D.C. was an African American female who helped to develop the actual genetic component research that is working for the vaccine. And so we're happy to say that we're involved in the process of this creation. And that itself should give us power of understanding and also with some truth behind the product and feel more comfortable with the vaccine.
So, Dr. Dennis, you're saying that anybody of color should feel comfortable taking the vaccine, the COVID-19 vaccine.
What I'm saying is that for the first time, we have a vaccine that can truly impact all populations, all races, to help move our country into that place where we need to be to get back to normalcy. And I can truly say that people of color should feel comfortable. And I'm a person of color, and I'm communicating this to others. Be very careful with this. Know that there's nothing that's perfect that exists in the world. There may be some small side effects that occur with the vaccine. Again, it may be cough, it may be cold, it may be a headache, it may be shoulder pain. But that particular side effect is nothing compared to what COVID is doing currently, which is the mortality and the death of individuals. Death versus a side effect, take the side effect if that's what you want to take a choice. Because if you do not get the vaccine, as the COVID-19 continues to mutate and it continues to change itself over time, months to years, if you don't have something that prevents that vaccine from coming to your body to help you and prevent yourself and others around you from getting COVID-19, it's going to be a danger to you, your family, and those around you. Mortality is high because the virus constantly mutates, it constantly changes, and it constantly gets stronger and more deathly over time. That's what this virus does. It mutates, it adapts, it changes. Get this vaccine. Make your body strong, such that with the vaccine changes, it cannot impact your life.
So, okay, I was reading another article that stated that in Europe currently now, the vaccine or the coronavirus, I apologize for that, the coronavirus has actually mutated and changed to another strand of virus that is going to cause a shutdown in Europe now.
Well, actually, this is true. One of the current articles right now coming from London, now the EU, is that they have identified some mutations in the virus that are different that have allowed it to become more lethal. In other words, at one time, the virus did not stay in the air or aerosolized as long as it is now. But now it's changed to a point where it is more infective, affects others at a higher intensity rate, and it floats in the air at longer distances at small aerosolized pellets. And so as time goes on, the virus will learn how to remain alive. One thing I can say is that its what we call surface product or surface life has not increased it. In other words, we can get concerned that maybe the coronavirus, if we touch something or if something's delivered to the house like mail, will the coronavirus or can the coronavirus remain on that surface for a period of time to transmit to others? We've found that that does not occur. The coronavirus only remains on surfaces for an hour or less than an hour, and it dissipates very quickly. So we're not finding that surface touching makes the virus worse or can be contracted or sent over, allowed to be contracted to other individuals.
Thank you, Dr. Dennis, for clarifying that. That's some great information to know. Dr. Dennis, will you take the vaccine?
I'm definitely getting the vaccine. I believe that the vaccine is good for me. It's good for my family. It's good for my patients. I am looking forward to the vaccine. I'm looking forward to the vaccine in its true potency, which is not one shot. Actually, the vaccine requires a minimum of 2 vaccinated approaches. In other words, you receive one shot the first time, which is called a prime 1. Then 4 weeks later, you receive another vaccination, which is called a prime 2. They also recommend a booster at 4 to 6 months out, which is called the booster 3. So it's a prime 1, prime 2, and a boost 3. What that does is it creates the strongest immunity possible. In other words, your immunity boosts so strongly and antibodies develop so strongly that you truly prevent the coronavirus from impacting your cells. So I highly recommend getting the first and the second. And of course, the third should be made available as time goes on.
Okay, thank you for that clarification of the different procedures or the shots that you will be getting. Dr. Dennis, is there anything else that you would like us to know on My Style Live podcast?
Well, first of all, I'd like you to know that the virus is changing, technology is changing, vaccines will be improving. These are just the first two because, again, there are over 23 companies that are in development. I have to say that for all of us, if we're looking to truly get back to our normal lives, economically, travel-wise, restaurants, working out, our gyms, just in general, we all need to work together. We have to work together in this process. There's still going to be many, many individuals that are contemplating not getting the virus because they don't trust it, quite frankly. But if we can get 70% of Americans, at least 70% of Americans, to comply with this process, we can get back to some normalcy that we've seen before and truly get our jobs back, get our economic lives back, get our healthy, safety lives back, get our children back into schools, get our education systems back in place. This is hurting all of us. Our children are hurting, our students are hurting, and we owe it to them. We owe it to our children, at least, to do what we need to do as adults for their lives. If it's not our own lives, it's not fair to them not to have the same educational opportunities in a safe environment like we had. And so I highly recommend that we move forward, take the vaccine, get number 1, get number 2. If not for yourself, do it for your children, do it for your family, do it for your other members, do it for the people around you. This is America. We all love America, and Americans need to get back to where we were before. We're the best country in the world. We need to remain the leaders in the world, and we can only do that with a vaccine. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dennis, for coming on to My Style Live, and we enjoyed having you today to vaccinate or not. Well, that's our episode for today. I hope you had fun, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. Join us next month. Again, visit us at mystylelive.com. Be sure to tune in monthly for My Style Live, the fashion podcast for industry elite, covering style, business, healthcare, music, and culture. Tune in monthly for My Style Live podcast. To learn more, visit mystylelive.com.